and was also nominated for the Aga Khan Award for Architecture in 2013. So without further ado, Neelam, Manjunath, everyone.
Okay. Just where is my just give me a moment. Huh? Get this thing going. Okay, I'm just hoping I'm not very tech savvy rather. So I'll just try to be. Good evening, everyone. And it's a pleasure to be in this forum. And hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
But the presentation is not visible yet.
Yeah, I will just get to that. I'll just
Okay.
get to that. So, yeah. So I have sort of, my practice has generally keeping it away from the mainstream real estate sector. Actually, it's more I don't know, because real estate probably was quite far away from sustainable and this kind of housing. I think just slowly only getting there. So I think maybe in future definitely I will be also getting there. So today I will be actually speaking about some of the part of the housings that I have been part of from the beginning of my career, and my insights into that, and then the recent developments which are very heartening to see the affordable housing sector. And there are several I think I'll start my presentation as well. There are several confusion people have about what is affordable housing and to which sector does it go to. So I will start from there. And that also actually defines, though I have not been in the real estate sector, but housing has been a main focus on housing the common person or housing for the masses has been something which I have been really have been working on in one way or the other. And it also is very much related to why I have been trying to get into sustainability and the kind of what we generally call alternative buildings and things like that today, is that we all know about the global warming, and we all know that, I think I didn't include because I thought that other people were including the construction sector is one of the biggest polluter, more than 49 to 50%. In some countries in UAE, it can cross up to 60% polluting that is being done. And the green buildings, just now we had Sweta spoke about it in such a detail. What we are doing is not even less than, that is less than 55%, just 5% probably. So you can see the deficit that we have there. And so when the research scientists, they research and they say that we are going to use these, different kind of technologies. So they do this citing these urban poor people most of the time, or the rural poor, and they will have this slum, or they have this kind of pigeonhole apartments from Hong Kong, and even Mumbai. I could say this could be anywhere, probably for that matter, in any developed city. But when it comes to actually applying that, so you are able to get funds and do all these things and everything, citing these things, but it actually comes to giving the housing stock, that money goes somewhere else. And also the technology that is used is also something else. So all this research which is done and then it is projected and all these kind of things actually is really not helping the scenario today. And I think maybe because of that, probably this, steps of affordable housing, and public-private partnership, these kind of models have been actually brought out. And some of the problems that these people face here is of course they migrate to the cities. This because also there is not much development in the rural sector. And these projections, just before, so when we say that we are going to supply housing, before supplying, we also have to say, can we reduce the supply to the minimum first? So that the supplying, the activity becomes much more efficient and much more focused. So the projections about urbanization is by the builders, is by the so-called developed countries and the developing countries who want to show that they are developed, again, to get some benefits or some mileage, or there can be many other, we all know the way the society is running at the moment and why we are in the global warming stage. That's another factor. The country which produces the maximum or uses the maximum concrete is called the most advanced country in the world. So these are some of the scenarios which actually, that's what is the criteria of judging. So if a country, even though it has a housing stock and doesn't need even that, even then it will, if it has to show that it is advanced, it has to keep on pouring this concrete just to count itself into that particular bracket of advanced countries, the most advanced countries and things like that. You can go growth of economy and such a this thing. In all this, the common man for whom all this exercise was being put into the file is actually lost. The person at the bottom of the pyramid, his welfare is lost. So it's a very heartening thing that government and across the world, the UN has tried to do something in this sector, and this affordable housing, word or term has been put. I was introduced to this term way back in 1998 or 97. We started working with the Rajivgandhi Rural Housing Corporation, and we were trying to do houses for the poor for 40,000 rupees at that time, 250 square feet and 40,000. There's a scheme called Ashriya scheme, and we started working there. And that time we were talking about what is affordable housing. So general affordability, which is taken as 3 to 4 times the annual income. And however, in all the schemes and projects where subsidies actually offered, is taken around 5 times the annual income of the household, and either as a single unit part of a building complex or multiple dwelling unit, which is we call it, could be taken as flats or apartments, will be taken as affordability's entitlement. And the area of the dwelling units for the EWS and low income group, it is more or less taken as, now I think this is a new norm, around 30 square meter, which will be approximately 320 square feet. And people of LIG, which is around 60 square meters, around 600 square feet. That's how it is taken. There's one factor, even I will be going through many of these things, that one factor that which probably, I think I will discuss that as a little later when we are going into this, certain factors which are not taken, or I think it's better to. Now the thing is, if I have an income, or they have a particular family has an income of 3 lakh right now, and so you give him a 30 or 30 square meter apartment or whatever flat you call it, but over a period of time, his economical situation increases and becomes better. What does he do and where does he go? A similar thing with LIG also. Now those things factoring, which is called the incremental housing, somehow I do not know whether that's too much of factoring in is there, or it can be done. That remains to be seen. The housing that we were doing at that time, we really thought about it, and you give a basic house and you give some way, in a way that the family can actually grow over a period of time to become at least, that the place is suitable even up to 15 years or 20 years, in which once they have invested that money, they are able to use that place for that much time till children grow and they are in school or in college or something like that. That factor of affordability, which will come over a period of time, is somehow most of the time not factored in. And we need to have a way to factor that in as well. And even at that time, it was a little bit of a problem. And I think I already discussed a little bit right now about the population grown up to 3-4 decades, and urban population. We always keep talking about urban population, which is growing to go up, and in 3-4 decades, it happened from 109 to 377, and it's going to grow to 600 million by 2030. And in census in 2011, estimated 65 million slum population in the 4,041 statutory towns in India. And so the technical committee, which actually estimated the housing shortage at 18.78 million during the 12th financial year period, and 95% of this housing shortage is estimated in the economically weaker sections and in the low income group. So in this direction, the ministry has been implementing GNNURM and Rajiv Awas Yojna as supply side interventions to tackle the problem of slums. The scheme of affordable housing in partnership, that we call it AHP. That's what it aims to encourage private sector participation, and that's where the real estate sector actually can come in creation of affordable housing stock, and recognizing that the government efforts are quite insufficient to address the housing shortage. And this particular part was also again earlier introduced in 2009 earlier, as BSUP component of Jawaharlal National Urban Renewal Mission, and subsequently affordable housing in AHP was dovetailed into along with Rajiv Awas Yojna in 2011. And again, this further, it has been approved to have implementation of the Rajiv Awas Yojna for the period of 2013 to 2022. And this will also continue as part of the AHP will continue as being part of the Rajiv Awas Yojna, which envisions a slum-free India with inclusive and equitable cities in which every citizen has access to basic civic structure, infrastructure, social amenities, and decent shelter. So the two main aim that was there to focus was on bringing all existing slums, notified or non-notified, within the formal systems and enabling them to avail the basic amenities that is available for the rest of the city or the union, territories. The second thing that was supposed to focus on was addressing the failures of the formal system that lie behind the creation of slums by planning the affordable housing stock for the urban poor and initiating crucial policy changes required for facilitating the same. And this part has been because all the people who live in the bigger houses and affluent houses, they need service. You have maids and you have drivers and you have all these. The service industry, it services the society. Are the most of such people actually live in this kind of, they're called the the fringe population, but they're also the service population, and they because of the fact that they have to stay close to the place because they can't either afford long distance travels and all these kind of things, they tend to stay nearby, and that's what actually started becoming to a slum. And that's actually a failure from the planning, by the planning authorities. And this particular scheme, is there to address that. And this involves the two steps. That was the preparation of slum-free city plan of action, and the preparation of projects to prioritize, slums. And they are also in two parts. One is the curative strategy for slum development of all existing slums, and then preventing strategy for containment of growth of the further slums. So these are the two parts that they have done, and I think the guidelines is available, and I think even we can. I'm sure from Architect Sayari can actually share that. I will hand over copy, and it can be shared on as additional data. It has got a scope of coverage. I'll just quickly go through a very quick, very quickly in point wise. Institutionalizing mechanism for preventing of slum, including creation of affordable housing stock, address the housing shortage through public-private partnership, and provide necessary fillip to the activities of the housing boards and development authorities, and encourage state government and union territories to provide incentives to facilitate accelerated creation of affordable housing stock by the private sector. I mean, private sector or related private sectors. That's what the thing. That was the objective, and the scope is to construction of houses for EWS and LIG as part of group housing schemes. And these housing schemes can be implemented by the states and the union territories through partnership with private sector or public sector. And for the purpose of this scheme, they can be the main parameters can be like affordable houses, which will be dwelling units with carpet area, as we spoke about, between 21 to 27 square meter. And then we have economically weaker sections of from, again, that's another bracket of 28 to 60 square meter. And for LIG between 28 to 40. I mean, that's the kind of thing that, and then 41 to 60 square meter. So that's the kind of, and the sale price of these houses would be determined by the state with due consideration to affordability of targeted segment. And then we can have the affordable housing projects where there's multiple dwelling, projects. They'll be there. At least 60% of the FAR for dwelling units of carpet area, whatever we have discussed now, will be considered as affordable housing projects. And in addition, 35% of the total number of dwelling units constructed should be of carpet area between, that is for the EWS category. Here are the kind of projects which actually can be, taken, and they can also have this commercial units and provision of servant quarters is not along the main dwelling is not counted in this kind of in this category. And the economic criteria of the beneficiaries was about that we already discussed in the beginning, the annual household income of up to 1 lakh, that for EWS, and having an annual household income of 1 to 2 lakhs, that is for LIG. And duration, of course, we talked about 2022, but I doubt as to how much we have actually reached. Here I will go for a very small example from one state, which is Andhra Pradesh. And I think I really like the way they have tried to make the policy. I mean, implementation is still remains to be seen to how it has gone through. And they have told that they are doing it like citizen-centric view, keeping forth the economic, physical, and social comforts of the citizen as an end user. And then one more thing which they have tried to tell in that is the policy in order to bring more dignity to the end user and to encourage a market-driven perspective amongst the service providers. They discourage the use of the term beneficiary. We used to use the term beneficiary in our Rajivgandhi Ashraya scheme. That has been changed to now end user, and that's in their scheme. And it also seeks to promote, there's one more thing which is very important. The policy doesn't want the state or the urban local bodies to become as builders, which is a big problem actually in most of the states and other places. They want them to become the government part of it, to become only the facilitators to the process of habitat development. And then you can have the developers and small time developers and big builders can become part of the actual process of habitat development. It also supports the view of, rights to land, and then you have discouraged the concept of land ownership by the customer and supports the idea of shelter ownership. This has some certain components. Demographic profile was something like that. Andhra has, especially, is located in Southern Peninsula, is the eighth largest state covering so much area, and the population which is 4.1%. And this one, urban population, our population here has doubled in the last half century, by 2011. So they tried to make a policy to provide affordable housing for all that reflects social, economic, physical, cultural, and emotional needs of the family to live with dignity, comfort, and security, and be accepted as an honorable member of the neighborhood or society. And I think this is something very important, the social acceptance through this housing, to give it to them, their dignity. The state also seeks to, it tried to have the policy to get a solution that bridges the gap between the demand and supply of housing to achieve the main objective of ensuring the supply is at an affordable price whilst maintaining the quality of the house. So they will try to, in this regard, the state will focus on involving interactions and possible synergies with multiple stakeholders like citizens, corporations, urban local bodies, state governments, and service providers. And they have some, again, the objectives are similar to objectives that we talked about, affordable housing for all. And we have the primary objective is to ensure no individual is left homeless. And it will also address the shortage of supply as in affordable housing. The major objective was reducing the housing shortage. And then we have address the shelter needs of destitutes, single women households, older, infirm, disabled, diseased, street children, migrant workers, etc. It also could involve co-living for elderly people, or such similar, especially for these kind of like single women household. These can be like actually co-living kind of a situation where it can be actually really developed in a very nice manner to give them a feel of community, living in a community. They also wanted to reduce the barrier to appropriate credit flow and shift from subsidy-based housing schemes to cost recovery from incentive-based scheme for housing through proactive financial instruments such as microfinance and related self-help group programs. They also, the policy also, talks about like a single window agency where from the legal, financial, and administrative barriers can be streamlined in order to facilitate easy access to tenure, land, finance, and technology by various stakeholders, and primarily concentrating on citizens and service providers. Also, the investment in housing in urban sector on PPP model for affordable housing and involve private developers in the construction of these kind of housings and by offering them various attractive incentives. This also promotes to housing in such a manner that homeowners have got easy access to the places of employment, and such that local delivery agents are engaged in housing delivery, thereby promoting local employment. This, as I said, this will also improve the service sector, and without these people need to travel long distances to go to their places of jobs. And they also generate awareness about and promote environment-friendly technologies for enhancing energy, cost efficiency, productivity, and quality. Monitoring and evaluation mechanism in the housing sector to strengthen the transparency in the building activities of the state. With all this, there could also be a creation of rental housing that has provisions of required infrastructure and services and transportation linkages to work areas as transit accommodation for migrants to urban areas. And that would probably check the creation of new slums. In the rental thing, there's also one more scheme in which they have probably tried to include, which is that you get a housing and you, in the beginning, it is a rental thing, suppose for 10 years or 15 years, and then you become the owner of the house. I mean, something like we have probably in our loan scheme, and then you are under something. The guiding principles, if they say, there were 3 guiding principles, they said principles of sustainability. So you have, even when you're providing them housing, you still are not really talking about more carbon emissions. And these are required because this is like mass housing. This is as we saw, it's more than 95% of the housing that is required today. Deficit is in this particular sector or section of LIG and EWS. So for that, we need to be the construction and things should be sustainable. Principle of inclusiveness include everyone, and principles of appropriate design. This is something which is very important. I think we are talking about since it's a forum where architects and other people are also there. Can you imagine somebody having a 300 square feet apartment on the 14th floor, and you are, like a cubicle, and you are used to having probably a goat or some other kind of occupation, which if you're on the 14th floor and you have this 300 square feet of space, you are not really able to do that kind of activity. Even if suppose you're in the weaving activity or something of that type, you really need a very different kind. So the design of the units, dwelling units, have to be appropriate. That is also important. They should have proper ventilation. They should have proper all these kind of things. They should have also got spaces. In fact, many of the accelerated housing schemes, not just for the AWS, are made something like quickly, like a pigeonhole, no proper. We are in the tropical country. We are a tropical country, and most of the part of the country has to be designed in such a manner that you have these spaces which can be like outdoor spaces, which are like spillover spaces, half covered. In the same area, you could give like a veranda or a balcony or something like that, which actually becomes a working space, and that really helps these people to be able to be in the city and still do the work that they really are trying to do. We also have the probable models for access and ownership, which is welfare, one, housing, rental, and rent to own, which I just talked about. So you start with rent and then you own it, or it could be an outright purchase with the help of different kinds of financings, microfinance and other finances. And the possible approach for habitat development, it could be multifamily integrated township. It could be mixed land use and mixed income housing. An agency for housing construction can be government housing by government agencies, housing by private agencies, and housing through PPP, as we have been discussing as a good model to do the work. Land ownership could be actually a problem. So the land owned by the government agencies can be offered for this, and that could subsidize the cost to the homeowners, and land owned by private agencies, and then they can be supplied some benefits by the government, and that benefits they could pass on as a reduced cost to the house owners. And then can be a land owned by private agency and pooled for future development. Like there can be small parcels of land which can actually be pooled together, and then that can be actually used for future development of this kind of a housing that can be there. As far the finance is concerned, they could be also cross subsidy, they could be debt, land monetization, and they could be corporate CSR funds that could be used for this kind of a project, these kind of projects. Provision of mortgage finance, they could be credit linked subsidy, or they can be also direct subsidy. The one that I talk about later, I think I will discuss that. Ashra scheme that we were working on actually had a small subsidy, like after 40,000, I think 14,000 was like a proper direct subsidy was there, and then there was this loan of, I think at 1% interest or something like that. That was with the government, the balance part of it, and that was given by the government, and they had a number of years in which they would pay that off. And the land on which the houses stood, that was, I think, given free by the government, and that was the government land on which they were built. So that was one, that's one model of how things were done. This is Andhra Pradesh government's one as an example as to how things flow. And they thought that things could flow, was from the Chief Secretary, and then Department of Finance and Revenue, and you have housing, and you also have the urban development and authority, and then we have the state development level nodal agency, from where there is a CEO, and different kinds of approvals and all actually could be taken care by one single nodal agency. In the same community participation should be involved in the entire project cycle, and from planning to implementation to monitoring of the project, including the community in the monitoring of the progress of the project along the established benchmarks, can help ensure transparency in the system. This is something which is very important, and I have seen it work when we were working on that Ashray housing, as I would tell you. We had Mr. N.C. Shailam. In fact, with him, Rajivgandhi Rural Housing Corporation was started by the Karnataka government as a part of the Karnataka Housing Board, not really part, I think as a sister concern to that. And there, all our clients were, we had barbers, we had leather workers, we have all these kind of people, and there's different weavers, potters, auto drivers, and there were people like that, and they were like beneficiaries, and to them we are providing the housing. But even with them, for each housing, I at least had 3 to 5 meetings with them to understand how they work, how they live, and what would be more beneficial to them. And then what is generally their where the income goes up, like from first year, if I say as a ground year, and then in 10 years, what probably could be their income, and then depending on that, the schemes were developed. And Mr. Shivshalam actually gave full freedom to us, in trying to do that and work with these beneficiaries. And I think then that was, and after we had done the design, and I incorporated the incremental housing part in that, so that I gave them, and these were like plots or smaller plots in the city. On the fringes it was slightly bigger plot, and on that about 250 square feet was given. And so we incorporated different kinds of things like veranda and the cooking at the back veranda, and toilets, and then bathing area in the open, and which later could be probably enclosed. And you leave an area where there could be a small staircase, and then staircase can go up, and then they can probably have a room on the top. How do you actually do this? In about 5 incremental stages in that every 2 to 3 years, they could add something more as their children grow up and they need to study, they need spaces for all those activities. That's how I did. And when the project started, by the time the project started, everyone was allotted the number or their houses. And it was very interesting to see how they immediately thought that since they are the owners, they really took it in a very different manner. They would come and they would monitor the progress of the project on the site. And that was something really good. And we could have a meeting, I mean, once or twice in a quarter of a year, and then sit with them and discuss the progress as to how things go. And that was something really good, I think. And that also gives them that they are part of the process, so they also have dignity. They is to offer solutions to certain problems that we could not solve, because putting ourselves in their shoes would probably be a little difficult. They would also were coming up with solutions, and that really enhanced the design, and also the relationship between us and the beneficiaries or the ultimate house owners. And I think that's a very important part that should be actually taken. And information about the project and awareness generation should be disseminated with the help of civil societies, NGOs, and other people, self-help groups. And social audits also should be conducted during the entire project cycle to ensure transparent allotment of the project. Sustainable, and of course sustainable technology, already we discussed that earlier. Then I would just try to come to the supply side, certain problems, what actually they come, and comparison of different types of housing sites. I think this is greenfield, and we have the brownfield. And so brownfield is something like in the cities where we have already an existing slum is there, and you are trying to redevelop the place. There are lots of problems, because I have worked on these slum development projects also, and there are certain projects which are faster that we were doing in the city. It could not be completed even after 5 years, because the encroachments, what they call as the people who live in the slum, they call them as encroachers. So they were not provided proper alternative site, or they were not agreeing to that to move out from there. So the project took a lot of time in just trying to get the land, for the project itself. And that is a disadvantage actually that actually happens. Then this also could be like a high cost of housing owing to increased increased demand in cities. And if you give it to a private developer, they might not be very inclined to do work in that kind of in the middle of the city. The slum is existing. Even government also might look at that, and the private developers might look at a very different kinds of the different blinders probably. It also difficult to, if we are going for multi-story, access to machinery in the congested area also could be a problem. But then this could, when you look at the better side or positive side, this reduces the sprawl and encourages land reuse, and connectivity to urban and reliable public transport, and all this, everything is closer, encourages high density living, and thereby making better use of land allotted to housing, access to more job opportunities, and realization of previously vacant or abandoned neighborhoods that could be utilized for this kind of purpose. In the green field, you could have larger size home, as I said, one could give a smaller plot also so that people can actually at the fringe of the city. It's easy to scale up these projects and achieve economy of scale. And there is a clean slate development, so there is no baggage on previous land ownership and things like that. So that thing is easier. But the disadvantage again happens, the increase commute time because they are on the further end of the cities, and they have high cost of setting up the urban infrastructure because all services need to be stretched to that area, and then you usually developed and arable land, and then could affect actually the wildlife with species and things like that. It also increases the urban sprawl and encourages sedentary lifestyle. So these are some of the problems that actually could come, and one second, where is it gone? Yeah. Now I'll come down to some of the recommendations. I mean, this was up to now. I was discussing about the urban Andhra Pradesh thing, how they had done it. And then I'm right now I would like to just bring to you some of the recommendations by the UN Habitat Program on affordable housing. And these are recommendations that they have given. And from the supply side, if we see, we have the problems that are there, land acquisition and securing a title, and land use zoning and regulations. Then you have a financing, housing supply, and designing and construction. So we have the cities which has a role, and there's a lot of it here. And I think I would request the organizers to put this. I'll just go through few of them. The land acquisition process should be transparent. Cities should emphasize property rights. Cities should explore the transition from a conventional segregation of single-use land to more mixed uses. And cities need to outline a research-based long-term vision of anticipated growth for the next 25-30 years with a plan to phase housing development in important areas. One should not be just doing it in a haphazard manner anywhere we get it and we just try to do it. And there are many more. The financial models should go beyond meeting initial costs. That's what I was trying to tell in the beginning. And to ensure long-term affordability. That is, I think, a very important component that should be factored in. The tax credits are not a very viable solution in the long term. And real estate developers can be encouraged to provide these kind of affordable housing units through measures such as relaxation in development controls to them, like height, density, and building setback, energy efficiency, bonus systems, fast track approvals to them, reduction, exemption, and refund of application fee, infrastructure rate, charges or rates for such projects. So then more real estate people, with less restrictions, they would probably, they will come to this. But with this, cities again will have a, not, I wouldn't say call it a problem, but another task to account for environmental impacts and efforts and effects of these local structures with these relaxations, so that the real estate sector does not exploit the relaxations, and then and that doesn't create more environmental impacts and things like that. And sound urban planning, integrated urban development so that the infrastructure and everything is actually aligned to these. And they should also explore to generate funds for infrastructure development, such as developer or employer contributions, land access charges from lease, etc. Taxation can be structured to raise funds for urban infrastructure and incentivizing the developers to do so. The development should be encouraged where practical, such as conversion of offices or repurposing underused or decommissioned land or buildings to improve housing supply. And in many cities, these kind of things are there, old textile mills, factories which have been abandoned, those kind of places can also be used. When cities have informal settlements, they should identify mechanisms to provide alternative housing or improve living conditions. ICT tools can help to streamline regulatory requirements. Smart grids can help elevate pressure on energy in cities with a growing population. And to address labor shortage, I mean, these are all kind of things that can be actually from the city side. And then the investors can also be, incentivized incentivized by the government in such a certain way. And needs to embrace innovative technologies to finance and land acquisition, securing titles, etc. In developing countries where it's complex or impossible to raise funds from capital markets, The private sector needs to work with national or state governments to set up mortgage liquidity facilities and develop a secondary mortgage market. Where it does not exist, the private sector can develop the residential real estate development trust market, which can become a useful tool in scaling the supply of rental units in the cities. And then we can have impact investing, what we call, it's a new term these days, impact investing in affordable energy efficient housing can help bring positive social change along with investment returns. And they work with community on the provision of affordable housing, as employees will benefit from affordable homes that do not require long commutes. And the investors can keep these things in mind and then work towards investing in these affordable housing projects. For developers, investment in sustainable design concepts, they should stay abreast of innovative construction techniques, and alternative materials to cement and concrete should be explored with a view of reducing cost without sacrificing significant strength or durability. And advanced automated equipments and tools such as building information modeling should be used. And developers should also work with educational institutions to increase investment in research and encourage skill development. We also have the role of non-profit sector, where they can work with the city governments and the private sector on ways to offer alternative tenure models for those unable to access social housing or provide private rental housings. You can also explore avenues to develop more community land trusts and non-profit residential trust that we talked about. They can also for the housing providers. The role of the NGOs can on that one, and they can work with those kind of private sector investors, government and international organizations to raise long-term funding and develop financial products that encourage private investment through government guarantees. For the financing, side, advocacy and support could be given and help the would-be homeowners and self-builders to access information on issues such as land use regulations, etc. Create awareness on the benefits of mixed income, mixed use development, and then provide technical support services to communities that want to undertake self-construction or retrofit projects. These are also some very important these things. On demand side, I think there is a determining eligibility is a very big thing, because I remember even the beneficiary selection, what used to call out the end user selection, used to be a very big process where there used to be a lot of pressure from different kinds of sectors on the people to allot, and they were probably used more as vote banks by many people and for other such purposes, which is something we really need to think and seriously about. Evaluate purchase model, rent or own ownership, and access to credit. There are three things on the demand side that we have to really think about. And in the role of the city government, we have discussed now in quite a lot in detail. Increase a balanced mix of tenure models should be there. Mixed housing, rent to own and also ownership. There should be kind of a mixed balance of this mixed kind of a thing. And they need to develop a regulatory framework that protects tenants without distorting the supply, and protect landlords from the unfair effects of first generation rent controls. Use regulation to encourage uptake of new technologies while addressing the risks such as privacy. Develop innovative ways of establishing creditworthiness. And investors, I mean, again, similarly, I will get all these things that the promoters of the project of the workshop, they put all these things so that people are actually aware as to how they can go ahead, and even affordable housing can be made very not, I wouldn't say very profitable, but reasonably profitable in every manner. And they can also explore the innovative methods to provide financial assistance to the informal sector, very useful with the private sector and the city government. Provide education to improve financial literacy of borrowers, helping them to plan expenses and minimize costs of construction or home improvement. Explore the potential of diversifying tenure structure through models such as build to rent and long-term rentals, and consider supporting employees to meet housing costs through loan subsidies and mortgage deals. That was all that I had to say about this whole thing. And I think I have been referring to Rajivgandhi Rural Housing Corporation through, and this is just a very small snippet. This was an organization from Government of Karnataka, under the Ministry of Rural Development and Panchayat Raj. It was developed, created in 2000 as a special purpose vehicle to provide housing for socially and economically weaker sections of the society through effective implementation of central and state housing schemes. And what they had done, that they had made some 33, if I remember correctly, building centers, Karnik, they used to call them Karniks. And through them, these housing schemes, and they were like independent bodies, but they were connected to the government. And they used to be doing all these, ashriya housings that we were designing as architects. We had, it was literally like a social service, 300 rupees for one housing design for about, that is 40,000 rupees. And for that, like you were given a sizable thing, like 1,000 houses to design. So I remember doing almost like 25,000 houses, I think, or more through that. And similarly, other architects were there who worked on it. And they were done with innovative technologies, because Mr. Shivshailam was very particular about those things. So we did all kind of experiments with different kind of schemes of reducing the use of concrete, increasing the use of all other kind of eco-friendly materials, and also services. In all our projects, we ensured that there was enough of all these things that we talked about right now in the policy. We had put it in there. These are two projects which I would like to show here. This is the left one is in Mysore. This was a Lidkar, is the leather working people. It was a colony for them. It was just attached to the Mysore city. And if you see here, we have given this community space in the center. So it was like any other layout actually that you would see. And we had the commercial part where these people, whatever they make, they can also sell here. So these were all these other things where the community center was there, and there were shops and all are there. Showrooms were there where they could actually display. And this income that was earned from all this was to upkeep the infrastructure of the project, proper, to regulate the infrastructure and service the infrastructure of the project. So this kind of a self-reliant, kind of a layout or projects could be actually done. I mean, this was one scheme, as I said. And these were like plots on which this very basic, there's an entrance and there's a kind of a small veranda, and then you have this one room and there's a back veranda for kitchen and a toilet next to that. And that's how this whole thing was built. And there's a flat component, and there's a flat component on which one more floor could be done. And they could actually make it in the future on top of it. So this is how the incremental housing thing was developed, and it was quite successful. We did one more where it was on the fringe of a forest. A lot of bamboo was there. So this is a 250 square feet house. If you can see, it is one room, and you have this entrance here, and with this veranda in the front where they can actually do their work on drying and sorting things and things like that. So this was another where the local material was used to do this. And this is from the Andamans, where it is actually a prototype housing for a habitation when the large mass housing is required when you are trying to do a disaster management or rehabilitation program. And this we made with bamboo and a little bit of cement plastering, which also could be replaced by mud. And this was built by the people. So this was like a 2-bedroom house as a showcase that we had shown them there as a part of the training. And then they built it themselves to them. So these are the kind of models that could actually be, developed. This is a live project which we had taken in Bangalore, almost in the middle of the city, 2018, from the Slum Development Board. And incidentally, it also won an award under the Rethinking the Future Award. What it actually does is we have a core here. I mean, the 3D is a little distorted. It is actually a straight core that you have. There's a lift and you have the staircase, and you have the dwellings that are made in such a way that there's a basic room, and then you have the kitchen and the bathroom that is given here, and then you have these open covered spaces which you can actually cover as you get along, as your family grows, you can grow. So the same principle that generally people use in that Ashriya scheme that I was talking about could also be used in this kind of a place. So you have a veranda and you have a terrace which you cover later. So what one can do is then you can give a good infrastructure. The basic cost in the beginning can be given for very good infrastructure and the very basic unit, which as their income increases, they keep on adding on to it. So veranda becomes a room, and a terrace becomes a veranda. I mean, like that, they can actually build on that. So that was the principle, and with that, we had also got, this kind of mesh for safety that we had tried to put along all across the building. That is why you actually see that mesh around, on which they could grow vegetables and things like that. And since these will be trees, there also will be filtering the air, which will be like fresh air, with more oxygen to these people, that they're so used to living around them. If you have seen houses in the villages, you have all these creepers, for gourds and things like that, which are put on this around the house, all on the roof or in the veranda, and that's how they live. It's a part of their life, growing vegetables even from 1 or 2, and then they do it through the whole season. So that is how this thing that we try to do. And this also was supposed to incorporate small solar panels by each one of them, which they can actually put on the outside of these mesh. It's very small wind turbines, very, very small, which could generate like 20-30 watt of or 60 watt of electricity. If you remember, if you are aware, the solar mamas from the Barefoot College, Tilonia, the solar mamas, the solar panels that they actually put, it produces 60 watts, and the 60 watt, the whole family actually lives. So this also was supposed to be working on approximately that kind of principle of self-generating energy and all these kind of things. And if you can, there are a lot, even the waste generation, everything, even the rainwater harvesting, all these things we had. This is a mesh that you see here. It also catches the moisture from the air, and it also gives you enough water to be able to water your plants. So there's a whole thing. If you can see here how it is collecting here. So all these things we had done, and we got an award for it, international award, but it has not been implemented so far. I'm just hoping someday I will be able to do it. And this kind of thing can keep grow. So you have one tower, you have the second tower. So it is green. It is this thing, even in the middle of the city. It is not unsightly, and people who live there also feel very fresh. And on the bottom side, which is absolutely the ground floor, there were spaces where there could be sante. In Kannada we call it sante, which is like a hut in North India, where they could sell their vegetables and things, or their small, they can be tailor shop. All these things can be done on the ground floor. There could be a small school area, and even on the floors there were some service spaces that were there along the staircase and all, where people can have small shops. So it's more like a vertical village kind of a thing, a vertical slum, but with the same with a very breathable and relaxed kind of atmosphere, where these people who come from the village and they feel very alienated the way they live there in the slums. So to give them a breather, they give them a very a space where they can identify themselves. So that was the high point of this design. With this, I finish my presentation. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was wonderful.
Yes, that was a very informative presentation. We learned quite a bit. I think we can open out to questions now. If anybody has any questions or queries, we can go ahead and ask.